chance. They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not puppy drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me this evening, we have John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, all. Good evening. Happy to be
And-
here as always.
Yes, and also Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Evening all, how you doing?
Craig's on the old hotel Wi-Fi, so we'll see how long Craig sticks with us this evening.
What
always a fun gamble,
glamorous
that.
lead. A glamorous life you lead, Craig.
I wouldn't go that far.
People
if you
watching live,
if you like the sorry?
I was going to say, people watching live will notice a different background and those lovely grey drapes behind you.
Yes, I'm in one of the nation's boutique hotels that is. Although I have got the plus version of the boutique hotel room, which has the lovely grey drapes.
Got the grey drapes and the fold-up bed and the sofa in the corner.
Exactly. I was expecting Lenny Henry to actually come and welcome me, but he's not. He's not.
It's always disappointing when that happens.
It really
Good
is.
always it's a better breakfast at the Premier, and I think because it's is it still buffet breakfast? The Premier.
Yeah. It was table service, and while our friend Corona was around, but now that it's just Omicron, and I'm in England, I can just do what I want and dip my hands in all the different things.
The problem I have, because that's also the favoured hotel for my employer, is because I'm vegetarian. They have to cook the sausages to order. So,
Right.
Normally if it's buffet breakfast, right, you can go back as many times as you want and nobody judges you, right? But see, when you go up and you're vegetarian, you say, I want vegetarian sausage with my breakfast, and they say, no problem, how many? And you say 4, and they look at you up and down with utter disgust. And you just have to steer them back and go, I want 4, don't judge me. If they were there all the time, people would go up and you'd have 4 and nobody would judge you because
You do that in your first serving on a buffet breakfast. You slap 4 sausages on there, no bother, and then be disappointed that you couldn't fit more on.
Well, see, I could say something like that, and people would just judge me because they can see the size of me. So I'm just gonna, I'm going to say that. Although one thing I would say is that my wife is vegetarian, well, pescatarian. She eats fish, and so is my son. And we've decided that we, over the last 6 months, I've been eating what they eat, just because it's a lot easier. I've got a daughter who is very much she doesn't like to experiment in food at all, to be perfectly honest. So she gets her own whatever we make for her, and then we used to have to cook almost three different meals. So we've decided that we're just sticking with. I'll stick with whatever you guys are having, and then when I come away to the hotels, I get to have my steak.
Yeah. And you could never. The thing is, well, like when I used to go away, I never got lunch wherever I went. So again, premiering breakfast.
Yeah,
couple of napkins, 4 muffins. Yeah. Job's a good one.
Get your money's worth out the buffet.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
My money's. Dread the day when the work gets an email saying, Mr. Black took 4 breakfast muffins in addition to his all-you-can-eat buffet.
And he asked for 4 vegetarian sausages. How very dare you?
Just argue back that I was trying to eat the cost to get back the cost of the hotel room through eating.
That's it. Your company will appreciate that, the efficiencies of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, we'll park premium breakfast to the side for one moment. Jonah Lyon says 4 is for amateurs. I quite agree, Jonah, but you've got to give you never know who's in the hotel at the same time.
So you've got to accept judgment. Judgment will happen.
It will. There could be people that I'm going to meet later in the day, and I don't want to be sat there with 6 vegetarian sausages and a pile of beans in the morning.
And 4 muffins in your bag.
Although I did once have a job interview in a hotel, and the guy who was there to kind of judge was kind of having a cup of tea, and they also had a Nintendo Wii and an Xbox set up in the lobby. And all I wanted to do to relax was go and play the Nintendo Wii and the Xbox. But I was a 28-year-old man, and I thought that would look unprofessional in front of the guy who was about to interview me, so I sit on my hands. Anyway, if you're watching us live, we're on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also download us afterwards in audio format on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Alexa. You say, Alexa, play Scottish Rugby Podcast, and it's us. And I've just set everyone's Alexa off again. It's always fun to do on the podcast.
Mine's behind the door there, so you can't get to it. I've parked it over there because I know your nonsense.
We haven't tried Hey Google. Play Scottish Rugby Podcast, so I don't know if that brings us the official one, but if anyone wants to try, let us know. Anyway, so this week we've got quite a bit of news and some match analysis to get through. I wanted to start with, it's not a Scottish Rugby news, but it's Scottish Rugby related in that it kind of picks up on a point that we were discussing, I think last week. Was it a women's rugby? It was last week, wasn't it? The Welsh Rugby Union have handed out 12 full-time professional contracts to women rugby players who will be based in their equivalent of the Oriam, whether that is their professional centre. So it's good. Jazz Joyce is in there, a couple of other kind of big names, but it's great news, Craig. I suppose the concern as a Scottish rugby fan would be that this leaves Scotland behind, or potentially does, unless the SRU are going to act quickly.
I'm hoping I'm going to be proven wrong, and you're going to be proven wrong, and that the SRU have something in the wings, because I would really like that a huge amount. But I am dreading the fact that Wales are getting their women's rugby to get side together, and they're getting their act together on that, and the SRU once again are going to be in the background. And as we all know, we're one of the founding nations of rugby, and we're always looked upon as one of the founding nations of rugby, and we should be at the forefront of women's rugby, and unfortunately we're not. So it's great for women's rugby. I'm worried about the other 7 or 8 members of the squad that are going to be having to turn up and meet their pals who have all got contracts, and they haven't. But 12 is an odd number. But for a rugby team.
Are you sure? I don't know. I don't know if Wales have got players out with Wales playing in, say, Premier 15s.
What they're saying in the press release is there'll be 10 professional contracts with up to 15 retainer contracts. So really they're looking at like 25 potentially in some sort of retained format for the Welsh national team.
I suppose at this stage, though, because if you are, I say, an Emma Wassell, I know she's kind of gone pro. Has she done the Prem 15s? Yeah. Yes, Ian's nodding. Ian's joined us. Good evening, Ian. Ian nods.
I popped him on mute just in case he said he hadn't realised he was with us, so I'll unmute him.
I'm always aware. My awareness is good, isn't it? Especially as a professional driver now. My awareness is really off the charts. Hello, everyone. I think she's a
nutrition expert.
Emma Wassell.
Emma Wassell, yeah, she is. But I get it. But she was like an accountant, so I'm guessing that there'll be some players for who. Like to kind of suddenly overnight go from being in quite a highly played profession to here you can have 12.5 grand a year playing professional rugby for Wales isn't going to be that an attractive an option. But you could understand that the union would want to kind of keep them on a retainer because you need some, you need some bridge, John, between kind of going from an amateur setup to a professional setup and retaining the players that have come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on what that retainer contract looks like and how that is then negotiated with, as you rightly say, people's employers and things like that. So I think it seems to be a sensible approach of kind of almost like, here's your contracts for your really ambitious people who want to be professional rugby players. Here's a kind of halfway situation for those who maybe it doesn't suit yet. And then everyone else, this is what you aspire to, and it's just the first batch of it. So I think I can't believe I'm congratulating Welsh Rugby on being forward-thinking and seeming to get something right. But they've clearly got it right here, and Scotland need to follow suit very quickly.
And this, Ian, this isn't like something that's been long planned for Wales. Literally, I think that it was raised as a concern that someone like Jazz Joyce was going from the Olympics and playing for Team GB to back to her full-time job. Again, given she's one of the best rugby players on the planet right now, and I can't remember if it was the chairman of Welsh Rugby or the CEO said, "This isn't right. We'll sort it out," and it's taken about 2-3 months, and this is what we've ended up with.
Yeah, the new guy just sort of came in the door, sort of like in a Wild West movie, kicked the saloon doors open, said, "This is what's happening." The piano stopped and everything. Obviously, one of the excuses can be the whole COVID budget and all that. But if the Welsh Rugby Union can do it so quickly, why can't we?
Especially a bust.
Yeah, there's that too. Unless Ed Sheeran plays the Millennium Principality Stadium this year. Like John was saying, we didn't want to get left, or Craig, I can't remember when I joined in exactly. We don't want to get left behind on this. We already kind of have. But the gap, England are just destroying everyone at the moment. The gap's getting a bit mental.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I can't understand. And I wonder whether or not words have been had behind the scenes, because a lot of the England players have said it's not fair. And when they've said it's not fair, they're speaking in support of the Welsh, Scottish and Irish players. They're saying, that we play the Six Nations every year and it's between us and France, and the other teams take points off each other, and that's it. But it doesn't do anything to kind of develop the women's game within the Six Nations to have England pump everybody every 5 nations, and it doesn't actually do the English players any good for their development either. So you would think that I'm probably putting too much faith in World Rugby and the Six Nations organisers, but you would think that as a product, the RFU ought to be turning around to the other unions and saying, look, we've got women's rugby's on the rise. It's the fastest growing section of rugby in the world. You need to start investing in this, because it's not a great look for us to be pumping you every Six Nations. You need to sort this out. We need to come together and have some sort of plan on this. Otherwise, all this growth, Craig, is just a complete waste of everyone's time.
And it's also not serving the Red Roses either, because they have developed to a very, very high standard, but they can't continue to be at that high standard if they're pumping in tries, and they're getting 50 points to 7 every game that they come across. So look at the what we thought was, or have been, the number one team in the women's rugby world, the Black Ferns, and their England absolutely took them apart in the last two tests that they played. So it doesn't develop their team. It doesn't give them the challenge that they're looking for, as well as obviously it doesn't. People are going to start. It's like F1. Everyone was interested in Lewis Hamilton at the beginning of his career because it was a wonderful journey that he'd been on. But after 7 championships in the best car, and every time there's a race, there's going to be a Mercedes on one of the podiums. It gets boring and people switch off. Yeah.
And the Black Ferns, of course, I mean, New Zealand are now they've done similar, John. They've handed out professional contracts. We were saying last week, so this is coming in. Scottish rugby really does need to act kind of now. There isn't any time to waste.
Yeah, no, like absolutely. There's no we could review this in 6 months. We could do this. We could do that. No, yeah, absolutely. We have to act now if we want to, without being so. Obviously, England are so far ahead of the curve just now in women's rugby, and the gap will close, and the gap will close rapidly if other countries put in place the infrastructure to do that. I think women's rugby is almost an opportunity for Scotland to really reset and set its stall out to be a really competitive, successful nation very quickly, in that the playing numbers in women's rugby, we don't quite have that level of discrepancy that you have in the men's game yet. So it would be really good for Scottish rugby to really just invest now and try and get some success and try and get to a very high level in the game and then build on that, because we've said before on here, it's success in these games gets interest. Scotland were struggling to have anyone attend their games, and then all of a sudden they start getting a few results, start playing some entertaining rugby, and you can't get a ticket for love nor money in the men's game. We would want to see the women's game at that level as well. So a bit of success, they've got a big opportunity to get to a World Cup. If that happens, I said last week, I think that's the crucial point. That's the turning point for women's rugby in Scotland. I think we have so much interest in the sport at that point, and it's going to go from strength to strength. So big opportunity and not to be missed. We've done this before with Scottish rugby when they've turned professional in the men's game, and the SRU maybe didn't adapt as quickly as other nations did. So I really think some forward thinking here could be brilliant.
Yeah, I think I did a back of the fag packet calculation at the weekend. I said if you pay an every year living wage, you get 30 professional contracts on the national living wage in Scotland would cost $705,000 a year, and that's allowing for a £2,000 performance bonus per player as well. Which I know it's peanuts compared to the men's game, but it's a start. And even being generous, and that I just assumed that the SRU you've already got an HR and a legal department to sort all this out, so they don't need extra costs for that. But even if you're generous and you allow 2 million, the SRU had a 10 million surplus last year, and that's during COVID. I know there's various grants and stuff going about, but we'll get on to it in a minute. But crowds are back for the Six Nations, so money's going to start rolling back in again. I guess, Ian, I'd rather have this than another 2 Super 6 teams.
Yes. Yeah, because I think more than anything, well, I mean, for example, the guys from Super 6 are not going to jump straight onto the international stage, are they? So, you want a strong Scotland on an international stage. And with regards to that, more than anything, commercially, it's a more lucrative market, so more cash.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just a bigger market, and also it's about time we did the right thing.
Yeah, because it's not,
Really is.
that's exactly like Craig. Easy. You could, they've already attracted separate sponsorship for the women's game, and you would think that's how you put some money up, and you'd imagine it'd be fairly easy to attract some sponsorship as well to cover some of the costs.
Well, absolutely, and also you've got to look at they've just built a brand new stadium in Edinburgh that they can use for that they're trying to get more and more bodies into. If they're having a women's game there, whether it's an Edinburgh rugby women's team or a Glasgow, it wouldn't be a Glasgow, because they have it at Scotstoun, but that's an extra say you get 3,000 fans there. It's an extra 3,000 fans coming through the door. There's an extra 3,000 fans going through the gift, going through the gift shop, going through the Scotland shop, buying a burger and the most expensive burger and chips you've ever seen in your entire life. But there's people spending money, and I don't. That's the whole thing I don't understand, is that they're trying to attract more players and more people to Scottish rugby, but they're almost, and they're not ignoring it, but they're almost ignoring one of the biggest growing groups that there is out there at the moment.
Yeah. What do you think to the idea of maybe having the Scotland women's team be like the All Blacks and sort of tour around the country? Because they wouldn't sell out Murrayfield realistically. But this would give people in Aberdeen, if they play in Pittodrie, it give people in Aberdeen the chance to see them in a more local setting, see the national team in a more local setting.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah,
we've got stadia out there. Don't understand why we can't use the stadia that we have there. Okay, fair enough. If you're going to have it like at the football grounds, they're going to want their pound of flesh for renting out the stadium or whatever, turning the lights on. But it's still, it's done it before.
It's still taking the game, isn't it? It's still taking the game to other areas. Highland have got a fantastic setup up in the north of Scotland, so there's an audience up there for it.
Yeah. Very much. So.
My God, did I make a good suggestion?
You made a fantastic suggestion. Well done, Ian.
Jesus Christ! I'm sitting down. It's all right.
2022 has started with a bang for Ian Hay. He's pulling out suggestions.
It's all downhill from here, man.
Sam Marsh on YouTube is asking what league the women's sides would play in. I think what we don't want to kind of let this discussion just kind of die just because the Welsh have played 12. I think this is a discussion we're going to kind of continue through the podcast in the coming weeks, and we'll see what we can do in terms of maybe trying to arrange a couple of guests to speak to as well. But we'll maybe get to that in another podcast and kind of talk about I know we've mentioned in the past that the Prem 15s is maybe a way in, but we can, without getting all Welsh rugby about it, and creating Anglo-Welsh leagues. We'll park that discussion for today if that's okay, Sam, and we will come back to it in another podcast. Should we just touch it? Crowds are back for the Six Nations. Hooray!
Yay!
Which gorgeous person said in his preview that would be the case?
Was it you? It was John.
This guy. You were all the pessimists.
Do you know what it was? It was the power of McEwen's export. That's what it was. I don't know if I can stop drinking this now for fear of...
that's it. It's your COVID. Well, there's horse tranquilizers, and you're actually now going for McEwen's to keep the COVID away.
I've opted for a Smirnoff seltzer this evening.
Oh, lovely.
Is it a hard seltzer? We have discussed this in the pod.
It is a hard seltzer.
Where's Alan McDonald's when you want him?
I've still never had a hard seltzer. I need to get
I've not either.
No. How is it?
Effort. It's all right. Aye.
It's all right.
It's stronger than the dark fruits.
Well, I was going to say, how does it compare to strong with dark fruits? That's the benchmark.
Hey, what kind of bet? That's a low benchmark.
Says the point is scooping McEwen's in the back.
Hey, this is a proper drink. This.
Here's on your cheese.
This is it says on the tin, premium beer. Can't argue with that.
I'll tell you a story about McEwen's export in the Patreon.
Oh, well, there you go. There's a reason to pay you £3
This
a
is
month.
premium vodka mixed with orange and grapefruit flavoured sparkling water. So
if it says premium on the can, Ian, then it's
it's premium.
Sadly,
who can argue with that?
Here just says trademark registered.
Okay, well, there's not much to say about Crosby being back from the Six Nations other than it's a good thing and we're all very happy.
And
Hopefully that
nobody has any tickets.
Maybe
has any
I was going to
tickets.
say maybe we'll come on to that in our Patreon special.
have a
bit.
Patreon, have your hands in the ruck. Nobody has any tickets. Don't ask for tickets. Don't go begging for tickets. It's not a good look. Although, speaking of tickets are available for our live podcast on the 19th of March at the Biscuit Factory in Leith. If you go to the blog, there's a link there where you can have a look. Early birds have finished, but there are tickets still available for that. So that's going to be good. Hopefully, we'll be 4 or 5 of us there to present a live podcast. We'll be basically be the podcast, but on a stage while there's some rugby being played. So we'll do some live analysis of the Wales game. I think it's the final weekend. So some analysis of the Ireland game.
Ireland. I was going to say
Ireland.
it's Ireland. Yeah,
Ireland,
Yeah, it's Ireland.
It'll be a Grand
Wales.
Slam decider.
Could be, yeah. Just imagine, the state.
I've got my hotel booked for just in the corner. We're all good.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So we've the exact format still to be confirmed, but we will be there and we'll be doing some form of live podcast. There'll be a bit of match analysis for sure. We might have a bit of fun in games as well. We'll kind of slowly reveal more details as we know more and also as we get closer to the date, so don't miss that. Let's talk then about the weekend's United Rugby Championship action. Let's start with, I'm going to do it in order of in which the games happened, to be fair, so I don't want to be accused of bias. So let's
listen, we can have 5 minutes to talk about Glasgow and then 20 minutes to talk about Edinburgh. You're quite welcome. If you want to get Glasgow out the way, you're quite welcome.
Well, I don't think it's been a good weekend this weekend, so nobody wants to, I think this is the thing, nobody's going to want to get anything out of the way. There's nothing to get out of the way this week. It's wonderful. So Edinburgh Cardiff then. Craig, it was a good game. I enjoyed. I watched it while I was putting up a blind.
Nice, excellent. It's good. It's good to have something to do while you're waiting on the kicks to happen, or you're waiting on somebody who's been injured to get slowly carted off the field.
It took me a long time to put up the blind because the match was so good.
Yeah. Absolutely. How can I put it? Cardiff need to defend. I don't know. Have they got a defence coach? I was quite. But on the other side of things, the last thing you want to do is be unable to defend against the strike power that Edinburgh seemed to have put together. It really was fantastic, and again, the cult of Edinburgh have been the two main. Well, we're going to start opening it out a little bit because it was Bradbury and Kinghorn, and now we've got Boffelli and Moyano as well, and Bennett's in the background there as well because that he picked a ball up off an awful pass to score that. I think it was the second try or the third try off with his fingertips, and I thought, how did he manage to get that and pick that ball up? He was absolutely fantastic. Showed his class, and again,
it shows what confidence. Well, I was going to say, it just kind of shows the difference confidence makes. That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've been listening to a few bits and pieces regarding it, and Pete Horn was talking on the Radio Scotland broadcast after the Glasgow game, and he was talking about Mike Blair and how Cockerell very much, and we're still going to mention Cockerell when we talk about Edinburgh because he did shake it upside down and stop the sort of the tantrums and all the different things that were going on with Edinburgh and give them a hard edge. What I did find and what he was saying about Mike Blair is that Mike Blair has really just come in and made rugby fun again. And the guys he's given them that confidence to play heads up rugby. And you look at when they turned that ball for the first try, and it was James Lang. He identified the space, ball went straight out to him, and away he went. And it's that sort of thing that if you've got Pyrgos kicking the ball from the back of the ruck every time, you're missing all of that. And all you're doing is giving the ball to Cardiff to play, and you're putting more stress on your defence, which on the weekend was absolutely fantastic.
I'm going to make a prediction. I think that James Lang has the potential to be the next Chris Harris. And he's a very, very quiet player. nobody notices him much, but what he does is very effective and very good, and it allows those around him to play. I thought he had a really good game at the weekend, and I can kind of start to see what Gregor Townsend has seen in him. And I think we struggled, when he was playing in the Scotland shirt. I think everyone's like, "Well, who's this guy?" He turned up at 12 and he made a couple of tackles and threw a couple of okay passes, but he's not bursting through the line and doing amazing offloads. So he's no better than what we've got. But I think he just looked very assured, and sometimes that's what you need. And I think he probably is doing a lot of stuff off the ball that isn't the kind of stuff that you notice, but helps those around him.
Yeah, he's defensively, I think he's doing a lot defensively, and then he's suffering, or he's now getting the chance to play. When he was at Harlequins, it's the same with Velicott. When he was at Wasps, they weren't getting the opportunity to play on a regular basis. They were either on the bench coming on to make a difference, or they were not on the bench and they weren't playing. They were never getting a real start. And now he's getting the opportunity to start on a regular basis, along with Velicott. And they're God, that sounds really dramatic here. They're spreading their wings. They're getting on with it. They're seizing their opportunities. And yeah, I'm as excited about Edinburgh's backline as Glasgow fans are with Pulotu. I still cannot say second. Pulotu. And the same as you were getting with Sam Johnson and you were getting with Stein. You were excited about, Glasgow fans were really excited about them 2 years ago, and we seem to be getting that opportunity now.
Yeah. Did anybody see the Sam Lana stat about Edinburgh on Twitter this week?
Yeah, the least number of penalties, defensive penalties conceded
in the whole in all of Europe's top leagues.
Yeah,
they're the only team that are under 50%. So 49%. Edinburgh have only conceded 49% of their penalties from defence, and the next is Stade Francais with 55%. So it's a hell of a stat. I mean, Sam's put that down to Callum McCrae, who's obviously the defence coach, who's come from Sevens. I mean, Sevens isn't normally an area where you would imagine that defence coaches should come from, but he's obviously done a very good job.
So yes, I would probably counter-argue that slightly. I was always really impressed when you had Sevens guys coming in, and the guy that jumps to mind actually is Lee Jones. So Lee Jones, when he was a Scotland international at the start of his career, quite early on, his defence wasn't great. He was a strong attacking runner. It wasn't a weak point in his game, but it certainly wasn't a strength. And then he went off to the Sevens, and if you think about it, one on tackling in Sevens is crucial. You have such a limited capacity for mistakes that you have to be able to defend. And almost like Lee Jones came back from the Sevens to Glasgow and was a very, very talented defender. And I think Sevens is, again, it's going to be one of these ones we're going to start to see as things progress. Sevens has obviously brought a lot of almost innovation to Scottish rugby and rugby as a whole, in terms of attacking shape, in terms of innovation and things. But I think defence will be the next one. And obviously we've based a lot of our defence on rugby league patterns because of the types of coaches that have come through. But I think it's really good to see. And to be clear, Edinburgh's one-up tackling is fantastic. They very rarely miss that kind of first collision. There's a couple of exceptions to that. I'm not going to go there. But, there's most of their players are hitting that first up tackle, making it stick. And that just creates, when you're not having to throw 2, 3, 4 bodies in to stop a man, you're getting low, you're swiping them away, you're bringing the legs down. It's what we've all been taught to do, to tackle. And they're doing it well. So I think credit does have to go to the defence coach. Brilliant. Also, maybe shows a wee bit more intelligence from the Edinburgh team than they perhaps have showed in previous seasons, where they're aware of those defensive penalties. They're not giving away necessarily as many of those. What Glasgow are very guilty of is those brain dead, stupid penalties, not rolling away, getting caught on the wrong side. Coming in at the side, things like daft defensive penalties. Edinburgh are not doing that. So
well,
that always caught us. So that was always up until a year ago, even to the point of the only game we've lost this season at the moment, and through at Benetton, that was I think we were like 2 or 3 penalties in a row, and that ended up with us them getting the last minute kick. So
maybe I should say Edinburgh are not doing it as much as they used to. And
yes,
I think,
it.
But then I suppose, Craig, you're saying they did it, but then they fixed it, and that's the key. That it's Angus Thompson makes a good point. He says, is that percentage mean that Edinburgh are committing too many penalties in attacking positions? And I don't think it is. I think you want everybody's going to concede penalties in a game of rugby. It's not
they've conceded 89. I found the stat.
Have
yeah, they're 11th. Glasgow 12th. So they have conceded quite a lot of penalties, but it's 89.
So they've conceded 89 penalties, but
no yellow cards, whereas the Stormers, who are top, only conceded 46 penalties, 4 yellow cards.
Yeah, I think it's where the where the penalties are conceded that matters, isn't it? Because if you conceded in defence, then it means you're under pressure. If you're conceding in attack, then it just means you've done something daft normally. I mean, it might be that the opposition defence has got on top of you and they're trying to take the ball, but normally you're either holding on or you've done something.
To Ian's point, you're very rarely going to concede a yellow card from an attacking penalty.
No, nobody's going to say. No referee's going to say to you, "That's your 5th attacking penalty in a row. I'm going to yellow card you the next time that happens."
That's it. You're on a warning.
That was some serious caterpillar rolling.
That's the 4th time you've crossed in this last phase of play. You're out.
I'm just fed up here. You're annoying me.
You should have scored 4 tries by now. I'm really, really disappointed in you. Yellow card.
Yes, God, on you go. I try harder. I wanted to talk. Let's talk about Blair Kinghorn. It was interesting you mentioned Craig Pete Horn, who, wow, he's like what a pundit he could turn out to be. I thought he was really candid, really open on BBC Scotland at the weekend. But he was talking about Blair Kinghorn quite openly, probably more openly than you'd expect. Kind of talking about the fact that he just signed a couple of 1-year extensions to his deal, which obviously would indicate he wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But he was also saying, that in Pete Horn's view, Ian, from what he had seen in Scotland camp, he could turn his hand to anything. It's maybe that he just hasn't been challenged enough until now. Which maybe speaks something to Blair Kinghorn's character, that he needs challenging to play to his best, whether other players might not need that, but I suppose everyone's different, aren't they?
Well, I mean, he broke through, he won the pro, I don't know, was it still the 12? Or maybe it was the first season of the 14 when he won the Young Player of the Year. And he broke out in the Scotland scene a wee bit after that. Then just seemed to plateau. You just sort of saw the same mistakes, I thought. And maybe, I suppose he's maybe looking at his position like I'm a specialist 15, but there's very little chance of getting in ahead of Stuart Hogg. So, maybe a little bit of how much do I push myself? And also the fact he wouldn't have been happy. Things with Richard Cockerell, as we know, went a bit sour. So maybe it was just a happiness issue. But no, I'm pleased, unlike some people would maybe think, I'm pleased to see he's playing well, because I was worried that a very talented young player was going to fall off the radar. But, if he's sort of reinventing himself, still need to see, has he been challenged?
Don't say he hasn't played in big games, Ian. I'll be getting letters.
From me.
Strongly worded emails aplenty.
I think you do find, though, and I'm very I'm very wary of comparing him to other 10s that we have. But he is a totally different 10 to the 10s that we have. And he will be an excellent World Cup squad member because you can bring him on, because for me, in my opinion, he is a far stronger ball in hand attacking 10 than Finn and Adam Hastings, because they work they work distributing the ball. They don't tend to attack the line very much unless it's a kick over or unless it's an intercept, for example. Whereas
Hastings,
I was going to say I would argue Hastings is
Would you?
just as strong.
But I think he does it. He does it, but I think whenever Hastings runs up a lot of blind alleys. But I take Craig's point that Kinghorn has the physical strength to break through the tackle. So you're almost playing with an extra crash ball centre, which gives you an extra option. It's not saying, and I think that's the kind of the thing we have to realise, and it's not a bad thing for Scotland that I think Finn Russell and Adam Hastings are they have very strong similarities to one another. Nobody's the same player. There are no two players that are identical, but you could play the same game plan with Adam Hastings and Finn Russell, and Scotland wouldn't take a step backwards. I don't think you could play the same game plan with Blair Kinghorn, but that's not a bad thing. It just means you have to play to the strengths of the people that are available or the strengths of the weaknesses of the team that are in front of you. So if playing with a 10 that's going to do the same things as your other 10s, but maybe also will break the line, that's an option.
Hastings beat the most defenders 2 years running in the Pro 14. But
when he's beating defenders, is he doing it? I think when he beats defenders, he's doing it with a step, isn't he?
It's usually a gap. It's usually spying a gap. Yes,
gap. That's it. Whereas I think what Kinghorn has done is he's running directly, kind of through.
He does have the physicality to do that, but no, I would say Kinghorn does beat the man on the outside more.
You also have to look at that stat, and that's a great stat to quote, and I understand that stat. But Kinghorn's never been measured at 10 yet. In a season.
That's true. But Kinghorn also won that stat the season before, so he is good. Yeah. I'm just saying he is good at beating.
I'm talking about at 10 though.
In a running sense, we're saying that Hastings and Russell has a really good running game as well, but Hastings for me is the middleman in those three. Yes,
yeah.
I agree.
You're right.
Kinghorn can go. He's 6'5". He's built like a bloody train. He can go and run over the top of people if he wants. I think Kinghorn does have talent to come round men. I think he does that more often than not. I just don't want us to be getting caught in the idea of that Hastings and Russell don't run the ball, because Hastings does, and he is very good at it.
That's not really what I was saying as such. I understand where you've got it from, John. I understand what you're saying. I wasn't meaning that. I was meaning he's giving us. He plays the ball quite differently compared to with Hastings and Russell. It's like George Horn and Ali Price. If you have those two on the bench, one of them on the bench, one of them starting, and then you take, for example, a Greg Laidlaw. Laidlaw would be put on the bench rather than George Horn because he brings a different nine depending on what the game's
I would agree with you. I think in terms of if you're looking at it as a spectrum, I think you're absolutely right. Hastings is closer to Russell in terms of the type of 10 that he is. Kinghorn's probably more of he does have that capacity to be brute force 10. And that's not a bad thing in the slightest. It's very good to have. And I appreciate that. Yeah, we were clearly just getting caught up in the running 10 debate.
It's exciting, but I think the point we have now though is that, again, we've said this before, and I don't really want to talk about Scotland right now because it's not time to do that yet. But within Scotland and within the Scottish setup now, we've gone from having Russell and Hastings coming through and then nobody else to four international standard. I would say 4 international standard 10s and maybe 5 if you include Jacko in that.
Well, you've also got Donkey Weir as well, you know.
I said it national standard. Craig.
I take it Hogg's in this for, yeah. See, this is where one thing on the flip side of running games. Kinghorn, I think the sort of big work on for him will be his kicking game.
Yeah.
To develop a more
definitely.
nuanced, certainly a more nuanced tactical kicking game. Because especially for like international level, even though we're not going to talk about internationals right now.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, it's not passing as such, but I think it's just a little bit tightened up on the axes. One where he kind of threw it to, miss his laces at one point, but I think he was trying something else and there was a bit of miscommunication. But that, again, we've said it before, that's all fixable, and they're small moments in what was a very good win and a dominant win for Edinburgh, which no matter how many times Welsh people say this has got nothing to do with Scottish rugby having some sort of magic money purse down the back of the sofa, or
I was impressed with that. I
being
was listening to that
charged.
today. I was impressed with that. I was
Scottish,
thinking, I've never heard that for a while.
Scottish officials being in charge. That was all down. That was just Cardiff were very poor, and Edinburgh did
not as good as Edinburgh.
Not as good. I think the one thing I would say though is after Edinburgh got the bonus point, they took the foot off the gas.
Yeah,
Heavy.
And it was only when Cardiff started to come back in, it was positive to see Edinburgh then kind of shaking themselves out of that kind of malaise they'd got themselves into of going, we've got this match won, let's just coast it out. We've got nothing else to do here. We've got the bonus point win. To go, no, hang on a minute. We've let them in with a really soft try. We need to tighten things up, and we haven't always seen that from Scottish teams, John.
No, I think it's absolutely fair. And so to be very clear, I watched the Glasgow game and the Edinburgh game on Saturday night at about 1 a.m. So and I didn't intend to watch the Edinburgh game, but I put it on and I was enjoying it. So I stuck with it, and I regretted it on Sunday because I was very tired. But yeah, it was night and day from previous seasons where obviously I've been very critical of Edinburgh in terms of that ability to show leadership on the park and really just kind of centre themselves and say, right, okay, yeah, things maybe haven't, we're miles ahead, things haven't went our way for the last 10, 15 minutes, right, let's just park that and go again. And they showed that, and I think you're absolutely right to mention it, and I'm sure the coaches are mentioning it. I'm sure the players are very aware of it. Like, there's no better feeling for a club than when you get ahead, you get your bonus point, and then you just absolutely stamp on the throat some more and really put forward that you are a dominant side. You're not going to take your foot off the gas. You're not going to be bullied. And you rack up those 40, 50 points and start to really hammer teams. That's really important. It really sets your kind of stall out, and we are in a situation where the Irish teams are still considering, like, let's actually be clear about this. Welsh teams think they're better than us, but they're really not. They're bang average sides that we are better than, and this weekend we showed that. Both clubs absolutely pummeled Welsh opposition, and it should have been much more from both sides. The Irish teams are ahead of us. And the only time they're only going to start to give you that respect if you start absolutely gubbing the teams. And the phrase I said before on here, teams you expect to beat, teams we should expect to beat. And that should include your Bennettons. It should include your South African teams. We should be expecting, as a confident, competent team, we should be expecting to pummel these sides. And then the Irish will start to respect us. And we can forget about the Welsh punditry because they will get a mention soon.
There's the entire Patreon podcast is moaning about Welsh rugby.
Pay your £3 a month and strap in and get ready for some fun, guys.
Yeah. Go on, Craig. I was going to say anything else in Edinburgh, but I'll let you have a final word on this.
Yeah, it was great to see Glenn Young get his first cap for Edinburgh. It was great to see him come on. He did a good job. And also, someone's going to have a word with Charlie Shield and tell him how to get his bottoms off when he's ready to come on the park, because I think it got to a point where Velicott had to go back onto the field.
That's right.
Yeah, until Bennett scored a try, and it's like, right, finally, while Buffelli's lining up the kick, you can take your trousers
Yeah,
off.
but Buffelli, we need you to take at least a minute and a half here, mate, because idiot features here can't get his briefs
Still
off.
I'll tell you what, though. And we'll talk about Glasgow in a minute about their inspirational signings. But I'll tell you what, Buffelli and Mariano have been a phenomenal pair of picking them up.
Signings. Yeah.
Great signings.
Yeah.
And it's really and it's good to see. I think it was is it the young lad Matt Curry. And you're talking about another Chris Harris. He's been signed his first professional contract, and he's re-signed. I think he's come out of the academy, and he's going to be
He was
excited.
playing Super Six, wasn't he?
Yeah. For Curry Chieftains, I think it was. No, he played for Curry. Did he play for Curry Chieftains, and then he's moved on to. Anyway, there's someone who I think could be a Chris Harris, a replacement for Chris Harris further down the line.
We've made a short-term signing from Super Six, Fraser Rennick.
Yeah, the hooker.
Yeah, for McAnally. McAnally's injured.
Again.
Dave Cherry's not doing himself any favours of smashing his head into Bothams.
No, his whole career is built on the idea that his face is beautiful. He should not be putting his face in anywhere near that sort of peril.
Yeah,
he had the housewives recoiling in horror with that face getting pummeled.
Yeah.
I tell you.
The greatest moment I ever had at rugby training was with my shaved head. I had a Scotland top on, and one of the young guys in the team said, "You look just like Dave Cherry from behind," and I was like, "That's me made it, mate. That's me made it."
there's plenty of ladies that would take that, John.
Take it from behind.
Oh,
It's carry on rugby.
I implied, Ian, you had to say it.
Just shy of Patreon as well, Ian Hay.
I know.
Honestly.
Anyway,
Just
this is
after the
fine.
watershed,
Innuendo's
it's
fine
fine.
pre-watershed. Innuendo's fine.
Hi,
Well,
Johnny.
Johnny's joined us.
I feel like
I reckon Johnny doesn't go to training, does it? Craig, you need to tell us, does Johnny go to training, or does he just sit in his house until we finish the Embra chat and then just log on?
Well, from what I can tell, and considering the amount of miles that he's put onto the Doddy Aid app, I think he's cheating like hell. So I think he's all myth and no trousers.
Do you want me to tell you how far I ran at training, Craig? Another 2.1 miles there.
He walked up and down the side of the pitch shouting at folk. That's what he did. Stood at the back as a fullback and said, "You're doing it all wrong."
To be very clear, so the beverage that you're consuming there, Johnny, was that just water, or was that some sort of protein paste?
It was a protein shake. Don't make a big thing about it. It was my post-training protein shake. Leave me alone.
Mind you, to be brutally honest, he's making it training. I'm not, so all power to him.
A protein shake for 2-point-odd miles.
Does this count as a protein shake?
There's a protein in that. It's made of actual.
It says it's
actual cows.
full-bodied and full-flavoured, John.
Yeah. Have you checked it for like your vegetarianism? That it isn't like
I haven't.
76% cow.
Bovril infused beer.
Yeah, I bought some Bovril. I love a Bovril in winter. I bought some Bovril the other day. I'm very pleased. I'm gonna might
Got a
crack
hankering
one,
for Bovril now.
crack one for the Patreon. Actually,
I can see Johnny sitting there looking at his shakes, thinking that did taste a bit beefy.
This is outrageous. This is original Scottish premium beer, but it's canned in Wolverhampton.
Whoa! Oh man, I tell you.
Oh, Angus Thompson with the win right there. McCoons.
Coons. Well done, Angus. Wonderful.
Well done,
Glorious. Let's talk about Glasgow then.
Hey!
Oh, maybe I timed it better than I thought.
There you go. So Glasgow. Do you want to start off with some? I mean, it was a very good win, Ian. Should we start off with some positives? Because the discipline was shocking. But let's talk about.
Well,
some good
that's
things.
just the standard now. And
That's a hell
funnily
of a
enough-
like it's like standard set. Like we're just going to be crap in defence, concede loads of penalties, but just hope we score more points.
well, we've only conceded one more penalty than Edinburgh over the season. Interestingly enough, while I was looking that up. But yeah. So we're 12th and Edinburgh 11th worst.
But it's
this
where
month.
you're conceding the penalties, I would argue.
True,
Like
but-
regaining possession on your own try line and then somehow giving away a penalty.
Well,
just
it's
good
a
fun though,
high
isn't
risk,
it?
high risk, high rewards. The
Xander looks like he's thinned down, but somehow he's lost the ability to roll away. You think it'd make it easier?
he was being pinned in. It's Lions fatigue. Excuse us.
His feet, his feet
that's
are still
Xander Slander
quite far
from
back
Campbell
in the
He's Xander
scrum.
Slander, no. But it is. I mean, Glasgow seem to have really kind of gelled in the last. Oh, I was going to say the last couple of games. It's obviously we've had the break and stuff, so it's going to be good for the confidence coming in after that kind of break and hitting the ground running like that.
Yeah, everything just seems well now that we have a settled halfback combination who are playing with confidence and now know their systems, and the signings we have made have fitted in perfectly. I mean, what Josh McKay's only played like 4 games, and he's already he very rarely makes mistakes. That kick he did was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
You see that one
one
outside of the boot?
yeah. Oh,
Cole Forbes, since he's come in, we've praised him. Sam Johnson looks in really good form, and Sione Tuipulotu is just an absolute wrecking ball. It's his 2 finishes were incredible. I mean, we were talking about Cardiff's poor defending. I didn't think Ospreys were up to much either.
I really
although they
enjoyed how Anscombe was getting. So your numpty Holly on the comms was giving it. He was absolutely all about. He was like paid up member of the Gareth Anscombe Appreciation Society, and he's giving it waxing it lyrical just as Tuipulotu just absolutely smashes him out the road, and it's like, no, you're not having this today, mate. Sit down. But he did not. If it was like Johnny in defence, he did not fancy the tackle.
Does a skills coach teach tackling? Because if they do, Ospreys should get one.
You would imagine a defence coach should teach, or is it like a Paolo Maldini style like defence where it's all about positioning, and if you have to make a tackle, you've made a mistake.
Do you think you got? I would have thought that kind of going into training with Alan Wynne-Jones the Monday after the game would be enough to like put the frighteners on anybody to make the tackles during the game.
Come on, Cammy.
Video
Everyone
review with
knows Alan Jones has never been near the Ospreys for about 17 years.
He doesn't train, he just turns up.
Turns up in
Sits on
his
the-
wage packet and then walks away again.
He goes in the cryogenic chamber for a couple of months and then gets wheeled
His
out.
contract
like-
for the Ospreys actually has a big X through it, and it just says Wales.
He's like one of those big orcs, the ones that they birth out the bags out the earth, and they just go out, right, pierce the bag, he's coming out now, right, okay, and I have to go out and get him, and yeah.
Send him on his way. Yeah. No, Alvin Jones clearly does not have the influence at the Ospreys that we might have thought he might. The Ospreys were terrible. Like, let's be really frank about it. They were really poor. And it was surprising as well because actually they were quite a high league position. Again, I would probably go back to this argument regarding the fixture layout, and certain teams are benefiting from early season fixtures being a certain way. The Ospreys are one of those sides. They look much better than they are. Apparently they hadn't conceded many scrum penalties. Don't see how. Their props were mins, but that's fine. So, again, like, I think the result Glasgow put past them, I would fully expect Edinburgh to put that amount of points past them. I would fully expect the Irish teams to double that based on what they were capable of. I think they're a very poor side, and Glasgow did leave a lot of points out there. And I'm not being negative. This is like, I think it's a great result, a great victory. I was more than happy watching it, but if you're being critical, they left at least 3 tries out there.
I think I suppose, Johnny, is it they left tries out there, but they also let tries in, or let points in, and that's gonna, 19 points is a big ask. I know that they scored 38 points, but if you're letting the other team score 19, that's a big ask for you to get beyond that level yourself in any other game.
Yeah. until 60 or 65 minutes, that game was a lot closer on the scoreboard than it should have been. Like, I think Glasgow probably had the better of Ospreys in pretty much every facet. The scrum was pretty dominant. Rory Darge was basically unstoppable. Same with Sione Tuipulotu. But we just kept giving away penalties that kept them in the game. And to be honest, our decision making sometimes when we had the ball wasn't great either. There was a bit just at the start of the second half, I think, where we had a couple of 2 or 3 penalties in a row. We kept kicking to the corner and we're getting really nothing out of it. And I was starting to get a bit twitchy at that point because I thought another 3 points probably would have just settled it and get ourselves back under control. But yeah, kick to the corner, nothing really came of it. Ospreys cleared their lines, gave away another penalty, kick to the corner again, nothing came of that. I think we did score a try not long after it, but I don't think it was related to those penalties. So
I was dubious about Fraser Brown's try because I'm not entirely sure that was a legal maul given where he peeled off from with the ball and the way the maul was set up. I'm not entirely sure he was technically, because you're supposed to bind beyond the last man. And it looked to me like there was a lot of people bound behind him.
Yeah. Craig will know about that better than me, but yeah, it didn't look exactly legal.
I didn't really want. I was kind of staying off that because I don't want to be labelled as trying to be negative about Glasgow all the time. It was just great to see Fraser Brown back on the field, but yeah, it was borderline, and I'm surprised it wasn't. Well, it's. I think it's open to the. I guess it's like the scrum penalties as well. It's open to the referees. The referees. What's the word? His view of the game as such. Interpretation. Thank you, Ian. I'm glad you're here. But no, I think it's one of those things. I'll tell you. Rory Darge was actually. It was a shame he didn't get man of the match because I think he was one of the best players on the field. George Turner again, looking absolutely like you say. Ellis Genge is a baby rhino. My goodness, so is he. And if we could, hopefully, if we could get him away from the penalties and the wee mistakes that he makes, he's going to be a phenomenal hooker for Scotland. He already is a very, very good hooker for Scotland. But I think he played incredibly well. And then Josh Mackay, just 4 games and he's just gone, boom, yep, I've been here all my time. He looks like he's been there for many. He's a centurion at Glasgow. He's a fantastic player.
The difference in class and the players like Josh Mackay who come over with a pedigree. We've brought over New Zealanders in the past who've come over and they've been All Blacks and they've kind of come into both clubs and they've not necessarily hit any sort of form. With him, you just saw it from moment one. Just the absolute assurance he has, and he's just like, yeah. And I love the way that guys like him, Cole Forbes are another one, but they just come over and they seem to really enjoy their rugby, and he seems to just be really enjoying what he's doing, even in the short time he's been playing. He just kind of loves what he's doing, and it's just he's so confident, and that only benefits Scottish rugby. Like, people talk about foreign imports and the difference they make, and they're keeping these boys out the team and blah blah blah. They're upping those boys' level, because if you are looking as a fullback to try and get, as a young player, to try and get any sort of level in Scottish rugby, look at guys like Josh Mackay, look at what he does, look at the confidence he has. It only benefits both sides in Scottish rugby.
Yeah, I think it's the curse of the All Blacks, because anybody who's come across and played for Glasgow or Edinburgh who has come from New Zealand but isn't an All Black has generally done quite well, if not really well.
Yep.
Anybody that's come across as an All Black has been absolutely pish.
I can't think of a single. Todd Blackadder.
Yeah.
He's probably the only one that I would be okay with.
I can't think of anybody, but I can't think of anybody. I think of anybody that's got an All Blacks cap that's got, apart from Todd Blackadder, that's come across and played in Scotland. They've all roundly been not lived up to the promise.
I mean,
That's 'cause
Wheeler
we ca- that's 'cause
Matanga
we-
was a talent, you know. He had one really good game for his one game that he played, but
But that's because we can only afford the pish ones.
See, I thought Corey Flynn was maybe starting to come on at a game, then he left.
no,
He played
no.
he played one good game away at Ospreys, and I thought, this is it. This is the turning point. This is where we'll see the All Black. And he's away. All right.
No, I mean, unfortunately, the pattern of what had happened before maybe
Well, it
stood
was
against his one good game. Yeah, I always tell the story about Corey and his throwing in warm up against, it was one of the Italian sides. Him and Pat MacArthur are warming up together, and I feared for the crowd because he was throwing into the main stand at Scotstoun, and not one of them hit Pat MacArthur. Pretty sure, I'm 50 rows back, and I'm pretty sure it nearly hit me at one point. Dreadful.
Anything else on Glasgow then? From anybody?
It's
My
still
only-
all going to fall apart.
Well, my only concern for Glasgow now is they're starting to become a really feared team. I think they're going to be they're becoming a very, very strong team. My only concern is for next season and the row options, because if the Jungle Drums are telling us one thing, that you're going to be down a very promising Scotland player, and he's going off to a different place, and then obviously Richie Gray's contract is coming up fairly soon, is it not?
Richie Gray is probably away at the end of the season. We all know
Yeah.
that.
Do you think so?
Yeah, no, he is. He's away. He's been replaced by the big South African boy from Sale.
Yeah, Janse van Rensburg.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends if you've got some fantastic rowers coming through from the academy and stuff like that. But they're going to have to buy in another rower, I would have thought, with all their money that they're getting for Cummings.
Do you know? I think actually, I take your point, but one of the things I was going to say about
Rob Harley can't continue to play at the moment.
one of the things I was going to say about Scottish rugby is, yes, forward players win matches and backs decide by how many. But so thinking about someone like, we mentioned money earlier on, we mentioned the women's game. Thinking about guys like Johnny Gray, who's rumoured he's out of contract at the end of the season, rumoured to be angling for a move back north. It's almost like guys like that who cost that level of money. Like Johnny Gray will not win you a game necessarily unless he's tackling 43 people in a match.
He
And
won that
does
game
it.
at Leinster because he tackled
does-
43 people in a
He
match.
does
Yeah.
that, yeah. He does that, correct. But you look at young guys like say a Rufus McLean or something like that, like a moment of magic where you're scoring 7 points. Johnny Gray very rarely scores you 7 points. Yes, he saves you 7 points quite
He
a lot.
scored a hat trick a couple of weeks ago.
I know,
Yeah.
and where did that come from? He doesn't even know where that came from.
Yeah, he looked really embarrassed about it too.
He was completely confused. He was like, why wasn't I tackling people? That was weird. It doesn't feel right. So I think like the players that have been rumoured to leave Glasgow, I think in some ways there is not like for like replacements. That's not fair. There's guys that are very talented who may replace them. I just feel like, you know, when you lose a Stuart Hogg, you lose a Finn Russell, it's a replacement you just can't replace. You can't do like for like. That's not going to happen. Whereas these guys, you could probably get as close to a similar replacement within a budget without necessarily breaking stride all that much. So I'm less concerned about it this time. I still think the wrong guys at the helm though.
Are you,
Look,
are you slandering forwards players there, John?
Yeah, he's
I'm
basically saying
gonna-
forwards don't matter.
Absolutely.
I'm
Just
going
get
to
8
look.
big
I'm
lads.
going to. I think we'll carry on this discussion in Patreon because I've got some heavy stats to hit you with on how vital
Excellent.
different positions
Bring
are.
it.
Very quickly, Johnny, before we go for the main podcast and before we go to our Patreon, we've got an update on Doddy Aid. So we've got our.
Would you like it?
You can join if you're doing Doddy Aid, please join our league, which is Scottish Rugby Podcast. Ian McGilp's in the lead. He's done 238.02 miles. I'm assuming he's on a bike. Being on a bike's cheating. You might as well be in a car. That's my view on it. Controversial as it
I
is.
can do that.
I'm on a you know, I'm quite low down. I was doing well until everybody else signed up for it. But basically, I'm walking the kids to school and back, which is about a mile round trip. And somehow I'm not winning this. I'm furious. I've done 15 miles or something. And when half of them was because the app broke early on and said I was doing double my mileage. But so Ian McGilp's in the lead. He's got 238. Got Fraser Chisholm, who's, I believe, threatening to go skiing to get some of his miles, which again...
He is currently skiing.
That's
Why
cheap.
don't you just... I'm just going to start recording the miles I do in the car.
I know that's... I'm with you, Craig.
Absolutely.
Here we go. The Thistle have signed up. They're in 4th position on ours, right? Now, I think we should split theirs by 3 because there's 3 of them, so I'm not having that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Ron Wilson, well done to Ron Wilson. He's 3rd. Now, Ron has also, I believe, signed up to be a £5 patron. So, hello to Ron Wilson.
Hey,
Hi,
well
Ron.
done, Ron.
Hey.
Sup, Ron?
Johnny, though, is if you are in our league, get in touch with Johnny on Twitter, which is at Johnny Forms, and let him know which region you want to represent. And Johnny's keeping a spreadsheet so we can do our own regional league because the app won't let us do it. So, which district for our league is in the lead at the moment, Johnny?
Very, very upsettingly, Barbarians are way out in the lead. They've got over twice as many miles as the next nearest district. And they have both Ian McGilp and Ron Wilson in their district. That's why. Those two are accounted for 370 miles of their 465 miles between the two of them.
So they're banned then. So what we're saying is they don't.
And I'm next. Northern Midlands is next. 219.97. This is as of 4:00 this afternoon, by the way. I did it when I finished uni. So if you've done any this evening, they're not on there yet.
How many of those miles did you account for, Johnny?
I'm 30. There's only 3 people in the
Of
district.
219 miles.
Yep.
See, what she's
I've still got the most out of any of us, by the way. Just before you.
Yeah, but
Really?
you've been recording yourself on the train. He's been on the train and he's just been recording his miles.
He said he was on the train earlier on, didn't he?
He was behind me for ages and ages, and then all of a sudden, 15 miles just appeared
Because I went
overnight.
out on my bike.
Aye.
I see everyone's getting the bikes out now. Yeah,
It's an electric bike as well. It's one of those ones you just sit
Yeah.
on and just lets it go along.
I've got a petrol powered bike that sits right out there. I'll go and use and we'll see. Then we'll see, Johnny boy.
My wife's got me out fixing her bike tomorrow morning because she's
Yeah,
furious about how
by
far
the
down the
way,
league she is.
Tell your wife to get a move on. She's in Glasgow as well.
I was going to
Get
say
a bloody
she's
move on.
carrying your district.
Wait,
If
can
you
I
want
just say,
to.
hey, Johnny, is it just me and one other person in the south?
Yeah. So
Right, okay.
there are 41 people in our league, and I've only heard from or can see on the picture 16 people to tell what district they're in. So this
Right,
could all
if you're in
change.
our league, or if you're not in our league and you're from represent the South Scotland district, please join our league because honestly, I'm not going to do this alone. You know, the most
I'll tell you, we've got 3 North and Mids, so me and 2 others, 2 for the South, 3 for Glasgow, 3 for Edinburgh, and Steph from Rock and Roll's got 5 people in his Barbarians district, and so that's why he's winning, despite the fact he's only done 6 miles.
Who's the other Glasgow person?
Scott Brown.
Where are you,
There we
Scott
go.
Brown?
So-
13 miles. Scott, sort it out. Come on.
John, you're the only person that's leading their district.
I
for
know.
miles.
That's ridiculous. Have you seen this guy? Come on, sort this out, guys.
I can't
We're
believe
kind
I've done
of-
more miles than Steph by just walking the kids to school and back. It's literally at the end of my road.
Steph, to be fair, was in COVID isolation, so, so he hasn't done a huge amount.
That's too fair enough.
But then actually, I think Ian McGilp was in COVID isolation as well, and he's on 240 miles.
Yeah,
So
He's clearly
well.
some sort of ultra marathon runner that runs up mountains on his hands or some nonsense.
But look, Ian, tell
But there we go,
me
we
how
s-
you do it. Look,
We
if
still
there's-
need about 30 people who are already in the league to tell me what district they're in, so we can find out who's really.
So if
winning.
you're in the do let Johnny know so we can tie that up. And you know, hopefully the South will rise again if we can get some people signed up for that.
Get the fan out, Craig.
We're gonna have some Southern Nights chat in the Patreon anyway, so we'll get a second shot of that. Look, that's it for us for this week for the main podcast. If you're a Patreon listener, you will get a bonus podcast. If you're watching live in your Patreon on the Patreon streams, then just hang around and we'll catch up with you very soon. But for the moment, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from John, Craig, Johnny, and Ian.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
We should off freeze just while Cammy clicks everything off.
I know, I just click. I've got to click. I'll make sure I click on the right ones.
It's quite useful actually if you do stay silent, because see when you're trying to edit